Hi everyone, I hope you're all doing well, and today we're talking about is Intel stock a buy? And this is one of the videos where I ask you guys what you want me to do and what video you like to see, and you guys on the last video that I did requested Intel, so I'll be covering that one for you today and give my opinions if I think Intel stock is a buy. But before we get on to Intel stock, if you want to comment down below, let me know which stock you'd like me to cover next. There's been quite a few in the comments that are getting quite popular, so we'll see which one wins. All you need to do, guys, comment on the video, post the stock you want me to do, and whichever one gets the most likes, that's the stock that I will do. So if you see the stock that you want me to do already posted, just give that one a thumbs up, and then I'll look when I'm doing the video and see which one's the most popular, and then I'll do that stock. So yeah, don't post the same stock twice, guys, because otherwise it probably won't count, because I'm looking for the ones that has the most thumbs up. So yeah, let me know which one you want to do. But yeah, Intel won the last one, so we will be covering Intel stock, and I'll get stuck into it today. So Intel stock, listed as INTC. It's a stock that's been on the stock market for a long time. It's a company that's been around for a long time. It's a stock that's been on the stock market since 1980. So it's a 40-year-old stock on the stock market. And currently at the moment, as of making this video, Intel stock is trading around about $48. And basically on the 23rd of July, this stock was a $60 stock, and then it had quite a big drop, and it's now down at about $48. So it's gone from just above $60 all the way down to $48, which is a massive drop. It's a 20% correction that this stock has had, and obviously that's due to some negative news, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Just from a little technical point though, when you do look at the stock chart and you look at these sort of prices, you can see here that it does seem like it has found a little bit of support here. So it does look like, unless there's some bad news, it will probably hold here around about this $48. So it does look like a good point to be looking at buying right now at this sort of support level. But yeah, we are talking about a stock that has sold off about 20% recently. When we do look at the stock, it's got a quite decent market cap of 200 billion. And, you know, not talk about any small company here. A very low PE of 8. And it has a dividend as well, which is pretty cool, which is a 2.7% dividend. So just from here, if you didn't know what Intel was, you could pretty much tell we're talking about a bit of a value play here with a dividend. You know, it's a very low PE, and we've got that dividend yield there. So we're not talking about a growth company here, which we could tell straight away. And Intel's pretty much well known for being a company that produces a lot of chips. It also produces a lot of servers. So it's kind of in the chip space, really. You know, a tech stock. And the reason why Intel actually dropped down, and I think this is probably why you guys are asking me to do a video on this, is because it had some bad news of that Apple were going to stop using Intel for its chips. And as well as that, it had its earnings. And when we actually look into the earnings, they were actually pretty decent, to be fair. The EPS beat by 12 cents. Obviously, Intel in this earnings report was helped by the kind of work at home trend that was going on. People needing, extra parts for computers where they're working at home. But even so, it was a decent earnings, beat by 12 cents on EPS, and beat on revenue. When you look at the revenue growth as well, you can see that it was nearly 20% year over year, which is pretty strong for a value stock. Even if it's kind of like a one-off thing, it's it's pretty decent. And any other kind of day, you would, without whatever other news came in this, you would say that's a pretty strong earnings. But the shares did go down after reporting these earnings, and it was due to one of the chips being delayed, and basically that's now trending behind 12 months of the target. Now, Intel stock is one of those stocks that is competing with one of the big names in this sector. You kind of got the growth company in this sector, which is AMD, and then you've got Intel. And the argument for both of these companies is that Intel is kind of a company that's been around for a long time, has mass amount of revenue, always growing a profit, and you get a dividend with it. And then we have AMD, which is kind of the new kid on the block that's kind of trying to disrupt everything, having the technology out a lot quicker than Intel and taking a lot of their customers. So there's a little bit of a battle going on here between AMD and Intel, and that's what the struggle has been for Intel over the last kind of few years. Now, one thing that I'm going to say from my kind of point of view here, talking about Intel, is that this whole kind of space isn't a great one for me. Obviously, I'm quite decent on technology, but when it actually comes to this sort of area, when we're talking about chips and servers and everything like that, the whole reason why I've never kind of invested into one of these companies is because I just don't have a great grasp of the kind of sector and keeping up with the technology and which companies are doing well and which ones are going to be, successful in the long term. Because we want to be looking how a company is going to have good revenue and share price growth in 2 to 5 years. What's the catalyst that will make these companies go up in value? And I've never really been able to get my head around everything to kind of invest in this and be confident in my investments. And it's like one of those, I always look back at AMD back in like 2017 and the stock was like $10, and obviously now it's like $80. And people told me about it and I tried multiple times to like understand AMD, and I never invested into it. And it's one of those where if you ever got like a teleport and people say like, if you had, you know, like one place to go, where would you go? And people say like, oh, I'd go see so and so and so and so. I think I'd go see myself in 2017 and say, don't worry, just go invest in AMD. It's one of those that you kind of kick yourself over, but it's like I say, it's not an area that I'm hugely confident in. But just on this kind of the chip side of it and the delayed chip side of it, from my understanding, the main thing here is that chips, what they do to get them, when they develop chips, is that it's all about the process of making them smaller so they use up less power, and also in that kind of format as well is make the chips actually more powerful. And what AMD have been fantastic on is been getting out their technology a lot quicker than what Intel have been doing it. And because of that, that's why AMD have seen a massive share price growth, revenue growth, and that's, you know, the catalyst of why it's gone up. Intel have been a little bit slow in this area and not been able to bring out the chips, which has meant that they've been a lot slower catching AMD. Lost a lot of customers. Obviously, you're having a product there that they've been using that's a lot older, not as great as what AMD product is. Now, Intel is starting to catch up there eventually, but it's one of those that where Intel need to be a bit quicker at developing products to catch AMD, which is the problem. Nevertheless, Intel does have a big moat. They're not just relying on these chips, but it's one of those where they do need to improve themselves to get these chips a lot quicker to what AMD are doing them. Now, Intel has said that it is going to be working on this and producing them a lot quicker, which is fair enough. They are addressing the problem. And I would say that from Intel's point of view, it is a massive moat on this company. So it is quite secure in this area. So I won't worry too much about it. But like I say, it's one of those where there's a lot of competition from AMD here, and Intel does have to go a little bit quicker to keep up with AMD's progress. Now, I'm going to go into the fundamentals of the company, but just before I do that, if you ever want to see a little bit of back and forth, go to like some sort of chat rooms where people talk about Intel and AMD, and you kind of see the bulls of like AMD and the bulls of Intel like having a go at each other. It's always worth a good read. I did it before actually doing this video, but we'll get stuck into like the fundamentals of the actual company of Intel. So like I say, the company is on a 20% discount. Simple Wall Street actually have the stock as slightly undervalued. And when we look at the price to earnings, which is a great indicator, it's probably the best indicator for a value company. We can see that it's a P ratio of 8. And when you look at the market, 19 P ratio, the industry 37 P ratio. So it's a very cheap P ratio for this company. And just judging by the P ratio and how much it sold off, we can see that this company is probably quite cheap and probably slightly undervalued at the moment. When we take a look at what earnings and revenue are predicted, previously the company has done okay on the earnings front. It has grown earnings quite well, so it has been a bit of a profit beast. Revenue has kind of not grown huge, it's only kind of grown a couple of percent. So the revenue isn't as attractive, but it's a company making massive amounts of profit, which is really good. So obviously if it can carry on making a lot of profit, that will probably help the dividend side of it. So yeah, earnings side is good. It's just the revenue is a little bit flat, which is kind of a little bit of a red flag. And when we look at the forecast growth as well, the forecast is for revenue to grow okay, but I mean it's only growing like 2-3%, and you know it only takes one of Intel's chips to get delayed in a couple of more months, and you end up with flat revenue, which is never attractive. Flat revenue isn't going to attract a lot of investors into the stock. So revenue isn't amazing. The earnings is pretty attractive though, I have to say. On the financial side of it, on the balance sheet side of it, we look at the balance sheet and it's not a bad balance sheet really. I mean, 46% debt to equity, we can live with that. Nothing terrible. We look at the balance sheet and 25 billion cash, so a healthy amount of cash. It's got debt of 37 billion. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of cash for Intel to burn through, which is pretty good. Debt's, it's slightly high at 37 million, but when you've got that much cash to cover it, it's not terrible. So the balance sheet is okay really. And obviously one of the big selling points between AMD and also Intel is that you get a dividend on this one, and the dividend yield is currently 2.7%, which is pretty good. It's a dividend that's always been increased, which is a great thing. When you look at the payout ratio, a very low payout ratio, so you're currently at 23%. Obviously, that's a very safe dividend. You know, you don't have to worry about that getting cut really. You know, I think Intel could even afford to just hike that dividend up a little bit and try push you to a 4% dividend yield. So yeah, a very safe dividend as well. When we look into the insiders, there's not a huge amount of activity. We did have the chief accounting officer sell shares in February. We had a member of the board buy some shares, which was quite a decent amount to be fair. And also we had a couple of other members of the board in November buying shares. So there's not too much activity on the insiders, like no red flags really. So everything's kind of okay from that kind of front. So overall, with my opinion on Intel, it's a bit of a difficult one really, because the stock is very cheap. You look at the valuation, you know, an 8PE, it's got a nice dividend, it has sold off on a discount, and it is not a bad price really. It is quite tempting. I'm going to say personally, from my point of view, I wouldn't buy into it, and I'll give my reasons why. But if I was to actually put a rating on this stock, I would say it's a buy. Like for some of you guys, if you like picking up cheap stocks that have sold off, get a little bit of a dividend for them, it's a bit more of a safer play, but it will do quite well for you. And I think like there is obviously the threat of AMD, but when you look at Intel and its history, the profit that it makes, it's in the other income streams that it has, and I think even if it does have some problems with AMD and the chip side of it, it's still a solid company that's, you know, got a big market share here, and I can't see it kind of going anywhere at the moment. But yeah, overall, I would rate it as a buy, but personally I would not buy. The reasons why is because for me, I look at the revenue growth and it's not as much as what I like it to be. I like to see high revenue growth. I kind of invest into companies that have, you know, at least probably 7-8% revenue growth year over year. So it's just a little bit too low for me. As well as that, when I look at the share price and I think, you know, potentially over the next 2 to 5 years, the stock could potentially go up, you know, 50% in share price. But for me, you guys know, I don't really like getting into stocks for a 50% share price increase. I like to go for at least 100% share price increase. So it just doesn't have the rewards that I would like to get. But for some of you guys, this probably would be a good fit for your portfolio. So yeah, I would rate it as a buy. Just not a one for me at the moment. So I hope you enjoyed the video on Intel, guys. And remember, comment down below, let me know which stock you want me to look into next, guys. Smash that like button, subscribe if you're new around here, and I'll see you on the next one.